The greedy king. Once upon a time, in the beautiful land of ancient Greece, there was a powerful king named Midas. He was famous in every corner of the kingdom, not only for his grand palace and rich lands but for the mountain of gold he owned. Gold coins, golden cups, golden jewelry. His treasure sparkled like a million stars, but there was something more famous than his wealth: King Midas's love for gold. His heart was filled with greed, and no matter how much gold he had, it was never enough. Every day, he would sit in his treasure room, surrounded by glittering gold. He counted his coins again and again, as if they might disappear. His eyes would shine as bright as the gold itself, and he would whisper, "Gold is the key to happiness. The more I have, the happier I will be." He didn't care for the flowers blooming in his garden, the songs of birds, or even the love of his people. For King Midas, nothing mattered except his golden treasures. Little did he know, his greed would soon bring him more gold than he ever imagined, but also the greatest sorrow of his life. One bright morning, as the golden sun bathed King Midas's grand palace in its warm light, an unexpected visitor arrived. In the courtyard stood a weary traveler, his clothes dusty from a long journey, his face hidden under a hood. The palace guards looked at him suspiciously, but King Midas, curious and eager to show off his wealth, invited the stranger inside. The traveler bowed and spoke in a tired voice, "Great king, I have traveled far and am in need of food and rest. Will you help a poor soul?" Though Midas's heart was greedy, he took pride in being a generous host. "Come," he said grandly, "you are in the palace of King Midas. You will be treated like royalty." The stranger was given the finest food and drink, a warm bed, and servants to care for him. For a whole day and night, he stayed in the palace, treated like a guest of honor. The next morning, as the traveler prepared to leave, something extraordinary happened. The man's simple cloak shimmered and changed into a glowing robe, brighter than the sun. His face, once tired, now glowed with divine energy. King Midas stared in amazement as the traveler revealed his true identity. "I am Dionysus," the traveler said, his voice strong and powerful. "The god of wine and celebration. You have shown me kindness, and for that, I will grant you one wish. Ask for anything, King Midas, and it shall be yours." Midas's heart raced with excitement. A god stood before him, ready to fulfill his greatest desire. His mind filled with thoughts of gold, glittering piles higher than the mountains. This moment, he thought, would change his life forever. King Midas's eyes sparkled with excitement, his heart pounding with greed. This was his chance. His greatest dream was about to come true. Without a second thought, he stepped forward, his voice trembling with eagerness. "I wish for everything I touch to turn to gold," he declared, his words echoing through the grand hall. Dionysus raised an eyebrow and looked at the king carefully. "Are you sure, Midas? Think about it," the god warned in a calm but serious tone. "A gift like this is powerful. It will change your life forever." But Midas was too blinded by his love for gold to listen. "Yes, I am sure," he cried, his hands clenched with excitement. "With this power, I will be the richest man in the world. Nothing else matters." Dionysus sighed deeply. "Very well," the god said. He raised his hand, and a golden light filled the room. "Your wish is granted. From the moment the sun rises tomorrow, everything you touch will turn to gold. But remember, Midas, this gift may not be the blessing you think it is." Midas didn't hear the warning. His mind was already racing with thoughts of the golden wonders he would create. His palace, his gardens, his very world would soon shine brighter than the stars. As Dionysus disappeared in a flash of light, Midas stood in the middle of his grand hall, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. He whispered to himself, "At last, the greatest treasure of all will be mine." Little did he know, his dream was about to become a nightmare. Dionysus looked deeply into King Midas's eyes and gave him one last warning. "Think carefully, King. This power may bring you more trouble than joy," he said in a calm but serious tone. But Midas was stubborn. He waved his hand dismissively. "There's nothing to think about. Gold is the greatest gift in the world," he exclaimed. The god sighed and nodded. "Very well," Dionysus said. "From the moment the sun rises tomorrow, everything you touch will turn into gold." With that, the god vanished into a shimmering mist, leaving the greedy king alone in his grand hall. Midas could hardly sleep that night. His heart raced with excitement. He tossed and turned, imagining the golden world that awaited him. As the first rays of sunlight peeked through his window, Midas leapt out of bed. He ran to the garden outside his palace and reached for the nearest tree branch. The moment his fingers touched it, the branch shimmered, glowing brighter and brighter until it turned into solid gold. Midas's eyes widened in amazement. "It works," he shouted, laughing with joy. His excitement grew as he tested his magical touch. He picked up a rock. It transformed into gold in an instant. He ran into his palace, touching chairs, tables, and even the walls. Every corner of his home gleamed with golden light. Midas clapped his hands together, his voice echoing through the golden halls. "My dream has come true," he cried. "I am the richest man in the world." He stood in the middle of his golden palace, his heart bursting with pride. But the day was just beginning, and Midas had yet to realize the true cost of his golden touch. At first, King Midas could not stop admiring his golden world. Everywhere he looked, everything sparkled and shone. But as the sun climbed higher in the sky, Midas began to feel hungry. Smiling to himself, he sat down at the grand dining table, which was now solid gold. Servants brought him a plate of fresh grapes, bread, and water. Midas eagerly picked up a grape and brought it to his mouth. But the moment the fruit touched his lips, it hardened and turned into a cold, golden ball. Startled, he grabbed a piece of bread, but it, too, turned into gold in his hands. Desperate, he tried to sip water, but it became liquid gold, heavy and undrinkable. His heart sank. "What good is all this gold," he whispered, "if I can't eat or drink?" His stomach rumbled, but his magical touch had made even life's simplest joys impossible. Just then, he heard the sound of running footsteps. "Father!" cried a familiar voice. It was Marigold, his beloved daughter, running toward him with a bright smile. She had no idea about the terrible gift her father had received. Before Midas could stop her, Marigold threw her arms around him in a loving embrace. "My sweet girl, no!" Midas shouted, but it was too late. In an instant, her soft, warm body turned cold and hard. She froze in place, her face still lit with a happy smile, but she was no longer flesh and blood. Marigold had become a golden statue. Midas staggered back in horror. His hands trembled as he stared at her lifeless form. "No, what have I done?" he cried, his voice breaking. Tears streamed down his face, but they brought no comfort. His palace glittered like the sun, but his heart felt as heavy as stone. His golden touch, which once brought him so much joy, had now taken away the one thing he loved more than all the treasures in the world, his precious daughter, Marigold. Midas fell to his knees, his cries echoing through the empty halls. His greed had turned his greatest dream into his darkest nightmare. Heartbroken and filled with regret, King Midas fell to the floor of his golden palace. His once proud face was now streaked with tears. He looked at the lifeless golden statue of his daughter, Marigold, and cried out, "What have I done? My greed has taken everything from me." Desperate for help, Midas raised his trembling hands to the heavens and prayed, "Great Dionysus, hear me. I was foolish and blind with greed. Please, take this curse away. I do not want gold. I only want my daughter back. I beg you, show mercy." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, a soft breeze swept through the palace, carrying with it the sweet scent of grapes and flowers. The air shimmered, and suddenly, Dionysus appeared before Midas. The god's expression was serious but not unkind. "Midas," Dionysus said in a calm voice, "you have learned the pain that greed can bring. Do you truly regret your wish?" "Yes, I do," Midas cried, his voice shaking. "I see now that gold cannot bring happiness. I only wish to hold my daughter again. Please, undo this terrible curse." Dionysus looked deep into Midas's sorrowful eyes and saw his genuine remorse. The god nodded slowly. "Very well," he said. "I will help you, but remember this lesson, Midas. True wealth lies not in gold, but in the love and joy you share with others." The god instructed Midas, "Go to the river Pactolus. Wash your hands in its flowing waters. Its magic will take away your golden touch and return all that you have lost." Midas bowed his head in gratitude. "Thank you, great Dionysus," he whispered, his heart filled with hope. Without wasting another moment, he rose to his feet and hurried to the river, desperate to undo the damage his greed had caused. Without wasting a moment, King Midas ran as fast as his legs could carry him to the river Pactolus. His heart pounded with hope and fear. "Will this truly work?" he whispered to himself. He reached the riverbank, where the cool, clear water flowed gently over the rocks. Midas knelt down and plunged his trembling hands into the water. As he washed, he felt a strange sensation, as though a heavy weight was being lifted from his body. The golden glow on his hands faded, and the magic of his cursed touch melted away. The river began to shimmer and sparkle as the sands at the bottom turned into bright gold. The golden touch had left Midas, flowing into the river and transforming it forever. Filled with hope, Midas stood and ran back to his palace, not stopping for even a moment to catch his breath. "Please let this be true," he whispered over and over, his heart pounding in his chest. When he reached the palace, he saw her, Marigold. She was no longer a lifeless golden statue but a living, breathing girl, her bright smile lighting up the room. "Father!" she cried as she ran into his arms. Midas hugged her tightly, tears streaming down his face. "Oh, Marigold, I'm so sorry," he sobbed. "I will never let greed take away what truly matters. You are my greatest treasure." From that day on, King Midas was a changed man. He no longer cared for piles of gold or shiny treasures. Instead, he cherished his family, his friends, and the simple joys of life. The laughter of his daughter, the beauty of the flowers in his garden, and the warmth of the sun. As for the river Pactolus, its golden sands remained a symbol of Midas's story. Travelers from far and wide would visit it and hear the tale of the greedy king who learned that love and happiness are worth far more than gold. And so, Midas lived the rest of his days in peace, wiser and happier than ever before.